Hello YouTube, this is the Phantom Outlaw coming back to you with another review. This time we're going to talk about, I guess not so much a comparison as far as what's better or worse, but a comparison as far as differences between the Smith Wesson M&P 40 and the Glock 22. I also have in the picture, you can see a Glock 23 just so you get an idea of size comparison. The Smith Wesson M&P 40 is almost identical to the 22. But the 23, which is the compact line for Glock, is also included here so you can get a reference here. I'm going to remove the 22 because, again, it really isn't part of the review today. So let's focus a little bit more right now just on the M&P 40 and the Glock 22. Alright, real quickly we're going to talk about the size, the dimensions, and whatnot so we can have an apples-to-apples comparison here. I want to make sure that we are comparing the right things. They're very, very similar, like I said. As far as the overall length, 7.95 inches for the Glock, 7.63 inches for the M&P. And really the big difference on them is, I mean, just 0.2 or so of an inch. It's really not much of a difference there, so essentially the same thing. The height is 5.5 inches on the M&P, 5.43 inches on the Glock. So again, almost identical. Really, this is an apples-to-apples comparison as far as the size, the height, the weight. There's really not much difference. As far as the weight goes, it's about 1.25 ounces difference between these two, which is, again, not much at all. 1.25 ounces. If you're going to carry it all day, maybe some people might notice a difference by the end of the day, but for the most part, 1.25 ounces is relatively insignificant. But nonetheless, if that is something you're worried about, the Glock 22 is the lighter weapon between the two. All right, let's talk about a couple of other things here. As far as the trigger pull, these are both been modified, but standard, it's 5.5 pounds for the Glock, 6.5 pounds for the M&P. Modified, the Glock right now comes in at just under 4 pounds, and the M&P is coming in at just under 5 pounds. So again, they've both been modified, but very, very similar. The Smith & Wesson does have the Apex DCAC trigger system installed into it, which does make for a more crisp, audible reset, a smoother trigger, gets rid of some of the mushiness that's out there for some people. I wasn't disappointed with the stock trigger, but I knew that there was an opportunity to improve. And as far as the Glock, I did put in the 3.5 pound connector. I also put in the springs and polished it. I have had it come in closer to 3.5 pounds on a few of the pulls, but the average is just under 4. Again, I'm happy with that. It's a very audible reset with the Glock, much more so than with the M&P, but nonetheless, the improved trigger in the M&P does have an audible reset. It's definitely something that can be worked with, no doubt about that. Magazine capacity, identical on these two. They're both 15+1, so there's really no issues there. The one thing that really separates these two guns, that really cannot be dismissed at all, if you have to, I guess, be completely honest about it, is the ergonomics. But we're going to get to that here in just a moment. I put together a list of pros and cons for these two weapons, and I want to talk about those here first. Alright, as far as the Glock 22, well, I guess the biggest pro, it's a Glock. We all know what that means as far as reliability, as far as the history, as far as reputation. It's a Glock. There's not much more you can say about that. Perhaps among the top handguns in the world as far as that issue goes. So there's really no comparison as far as that goes. The magazine with the Glock, because it is the coated magazine, I feel it's a more durable magazine. That's not a knock on the M&P magazine. I think it's fine as well. But between the two, the durability, at least the feel of the Glock magazine, is a small advantage there. The sight radius is pretty much identical on these two. There's a slight difference, but both of these have aftermarket sights installed, which makes them almost identical. Another big plus for the Glock is the availability of aftermarket parts, both from Glock as an OEM part as well as other manufacturers. It's just almost limitless out there. There are quite a few out there for the M&P line as well, but it doesn't compare to the Glock line. Just go to, boy, there's dozens of sites out there. Just go to do an internet search for Glock parts, and you're going to get page after page after page of sites where you can get all kinds of different parts from them. Another big advantage, let's go back to the magazines for a quick second. Again, these are both 15+1, or 15 round magazines. The Glock magazines are still pretty readily available. You can find them just about anywhere. Price-wise, I've seen them for as low as $23 or $24 and as high as $35 or $36. For the most part, it's about a $25 to $30 magazine, and you can find them just about anywhere. The M&P magazines have been pretty tough to find recently. There's more availability for the 40, although that's kind of waning a bit. But the 40 caliber magazines for the M&P are about $35 to $45. I've seen them as high as $50. I've seen them as low as $30, but typically you're looking at $35 to $40 when you can find them, which is not impossible with the 40, not compared to the 9 for the M&P, but it's a little bit harder to find. So again, the advantage there would have to go to the Glock. Another big plus of the Glock is complete breakdown. Now, as far as the field strip, they're both pretty simple, but as far as the complete breakdown of the two, again, advantage has to go to the Glock. 34 parts in it makes it pretty simple. It's very easy to get to, very easy to break down. Really, the only thing you need, right there, a Glock tool. That's about the only tool you would ever need. Some people use a small flathead screwdriver for here or there, but really the Glock tool will do everything you need. The M&P, as far as complete breakdown, is a lot more involved. It's not impossible. It's not as hard as, say, a 1911, but there's more to it. You do need a couple different tools. A small punch, the Glock tool could work for you as well there. It does have its own tool in the back strap here, which you can use to break it down initially, as well as to help it take some of the parts out. But it's not quite as simple as the Glock. So again, the advantage there would have to go to the Glock. So right there, we've got several advantages for the Glock. Let's talk about some of the pros now for the M&P. Well, the biggest one, like I mentioned a few moments ago, the ergonomics. You cannot go wrong with the ergonomics of the Glock. It just absolutely feels fantastic in your hand. When you pick up this weapon and you hold it in your hand, it is just a natural feel. The fit and feel of the grip with the beaver tail back strap that's built into it, just the overall feel of the gun is fantastic. It's not even something to compare between the two. The Glocks do have beaver tail back straps available now. This is a Gen 4 that came out before the beaver tail, so this is one of the aftermarket ones. And it works. It's not quite the same as the one from Glock for some of the other ones, but it really is not a bad deal. But as far as the ergonomics go, that would have to be an absolute advantage to the M&P line. There's no doubt. If you're lefty, this does have an ambidextrous slide release. You can see right here, it is on the right side. Both of these, you can change the magazine release from the left-handed to the right hand of the gun. Not a big deal, so that's really not an advantage for either. The ambidextrous slide release, if you're a lefty, that would go to the M&P. For those of us that are right-handed shooters, that's really neither here nor there. The cost on the M&P is cheaper than the Glock. It's really actually pretty significant. For the base gun, it's about a $75 difference in price, but it does only come with 2 magazines. The Glock does come with 3. If you do get a range kit for the M&P, which I would recommend if you can find it, it's only $40 or $45 more, and what you get for it is just fantastic. You're going to get a 3rd magazine. You're going to get a Blade Tech holster. You're going to get a Blade Tech magazine pouch. You're also going to get a Uplua speed loader, as well as a real cheap set of earplugs. But for $40 or $45, the magazine, the holster, the magazine holster, and the Uplua, that's $120-some value right there. So if you can find the range kit for the M&P line, that makes a big, big difference. The rail system on the M&P is slightly better than the Glock rail. You can see between the two, we've got a slightly different rail system, but otherwise it's basically the same. There's really not much of an advantage either way. They both will hold a light or a laser, and really what more do you want to put on it? Maybe I've seen the little bayonets if you're a zombie hunter out there, I guess. Anyhow, another small advantage that I would have to give to the M&P line would be the stock sights. I am not a fan of the stock Glock sights at all. I have changed all of mine out to the aftermarket night sights, either the Trijicon or the Glock sights, and so I just don't like them on the Glock. On the M&P line, the stock sights aren't bad. but I did swap those out to some night sights as well. So really that's a big difference there. All right, let's talk about a couple of the cons or the negatives for these. As far as the Glock, as I just mentioned, the stock sights, also the ergonomics, it's a Glock. It's a lot of people like to reference it's like holding a brick in your hand. Some people also will say it's like picking up a small 2x4. Well, it's not that bad, obviously, but you get the idea. The grip angle, though slightly improved with the Gen 4, is still not the same as it is with the M&P, which modeled itself after the 1911. Certainly an iconic handgun here. But the ergonomics, again, go to the M&P, and it would definitely be a negative as far as the Glock goes. I already mentioned that the M&P is slightly cheaper. If you want to compare apples to apples and throw in a third magazine to the M&P, it's still a better deal. So if you're looking to save a few dollars, the M&P would get the advantage there. I also would have to say, so there's some simple upgrades for the Glock that you have to do to, just about, in my opinion, you almost have to do to them. The extended slide release and the extended slide lock, I think by default you really have to take a look at that. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. And I also want to mention that this is a safe gun, empty magazine. Empty gun. So we're going to talk about right here. This right here is the extended slide lock. This sticks out just a fraction on either side further than the factory one, and it really makes breaking the gun down much easier. And then right here we have the extended slide release. This little nub right here, I'm not sure if you can see it, but right here, this little part right here is really what separates the extended one from the factory one. And to me, that makes all the difference in the world. I think those two upgrades really are a must. Now, I have an advantage living here in the Atlanta area. I'm right down the road from Smyrna here. It's only about a 45-minute drive for me. And they'll actually replace that for you for free if you take your gun in and ask for it. Otherwise, it's about a $12 or $15 part. Very easy. You can do it yourself if you want to. But those are two upgrades that I think Glock should consider as a standard option for all of its handguns. All right, let's go to a couple of the negatives here for the M&P line. And again, I'm going to show you. We do have, it's an empty firearm. The stock trigger, as I've already mentioned, would definitely be a negative for that. It's a slightly heavier handgun, 1.25 ounces heavier. Magazine availability would definitely have to be something to keep in mind. It's getting a little bit easier to find them. The 40 calibers, you can walk into some of your local gun shops and find them consistently. If not every time, maybe every other or maybe every third time you go in. But it definitely is a con as far as there's not quite as availability. As I said, to completely break it down, it's a more involved process. It's a slightly more involved process to just field strip it. I'm going to do this without the tool because I don't have any problems or issues with pulling my trigger. But basically, just slide the lever down, pull the trigger, it slides right off. That's all there is to it. Put it back on, reverse all that, you're back in business. So it's really, as far as just a field strip, it's about as simple as the Glock, but the complete breakdown, nowhere near as simple as the Glock. Another thing, as I already mentioned, the aftermarket availability of items for the Glock is fantastic. Perhaps better than any other handgun out there. The M&P, you can find a lot of different parts for it out there, but it does not compare to the Glock line. So that would definitely be a negative between the two. Overall comparison, these two items, they're just about the exact same size. Again, not sure how these stack up on the camera for you, but they really are practically identical to each other. Reliability on both is fantastic. Glock probably has the better reputation because of longevity right now, but the M&P line is a fantastic line as well. As far as accuracy and shooting, I do use an M&P 9 when I do my IDPA shooting. I've used my Glock before. I just feel more comfortable with the M&P. That's a personal preference, and that's my opinion. I'm not saying that will be the case for everybody else, or you should do the same thing. That's just my opinion. But this is the 40 caliber we're talking about right here. So you really, I can't complain about either one of them. I feel both of them are very accurate. Both of them are very solid guns. You can't go wrong with either one of them. If you're looking to make a decision, I think the best thing you can do, if you're looking to get a gun, either whether it's the 9mm or the 40 or even the 45, and if you can't decide between the M&P line and the Glock line, is go to your local gun store. Hopefully they have some available for you to rent. Pick one of them up, get each of them. How's it feel in your hand? And put a box or two of ammo downrange with each of them. And really what feels best for you, what gun you're most comfortable shooting, what one you feel better with, is a choice you should make. Don't let me or anyone else tell you what you should get, because it really comes down to what you're comfortable with. And really the only way you can determine that on your own is to go to a range and shoot them. Most ranges, if they rent guns, you can probably find one of each of these available out there. But they're both fantastic choices. They each have pros and cons over the other one. If you've got any questions, let me know, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. Thank you very much. Have a great day.